So this slideshow will go through the three different parts of Project 2, starting with what I like to call selected light and composition, where you really focused on making interesting graphic images, making use of light and shadow, and working in black and white. So for this, I would encourage you to try some of the more advanced options on your camera. Auto could work, but again, you are comfortable hopefully with aperture priority and shutter priority. And maybe some of you are even comfortable with the idea of manual where you're centering out your metering. But one of the things that would be really helpful is to bracket, meaning to take like three pictures of the same scene, one underexposed, one, as the camera says, should be properly exposed, and one overexposed. And usually this is accomplished just by doing 3 clicks in each direction with your, typically I would do it with shutter speed, but be conscious of if you have a fast enough shutter speed. You could also do it on your aperture. So basically, one stop difference is going to be twice the light or half the light. So if you go and center out your meter, and then you go 3 clicks one direction, take a picture, 3 clicks back, take another picture, 3 clicks continuing in that backward direction, and take another picture, that would be a basic bracket. For the subject of our images, it can be anything you want, but I would say a lot of students go with architecture, especially being that it's the middle of the summer. That will work really well to have some really graphically interesting pictures, but you could do just about anything you want. It could be portraits, it could be landscapes, it could be, yeah, just about anything. But you can see how the light and shadow really make these images interesting. And I'm going to go through rather quick because I know that you all can pause and rewind if you want to see anything again. But the focus really should be on making compositionally strong images. Some of these are examples made by students, some of them are made by professionals or even just taken off the internet. But the idea is to really focus on just light and shadow. Set your camera to monochrome so that you're not distracted by color. Light and shadows, what I think I said. No color. And try to focus on making interesting images. And just about anything works, but try to find something unique that maybe we haven't seen before. So we'll edit these images in Lightroom just to make sure that they have a good level of contrast to them. And we want to make sure they're sharp. You could crop, but try to make good compositions in the camera so that you don't have to crop after the fact. And really let light be the subject of your images. All right, so that's the end of part 1. Part 2 is focused on time of day. An idea for this is to go out and photograph at least 4 different times of day, re-photographing the same three-dimensional space as similarly as possible. I don't think these times of sunrise and sunset are accurate. I should have updated those for now, but I think y'all can look up what time sunrise is, what time, noon or within an hour of noon, half hour before sunset, and then just after sunset are the ideal times. I understand that you're all have busy schedules, so try to do your best. If you work and that will be possibly an issue, maybe photograph on your lunch break or something like that, right before work, after work, that sort, so that you can kind of try to have a a space to photograph that will not be too hard, or maybe you're able to do it on the weekend and you can just spend one day doing the same compositions. And the idea would be to try to compose the same exact image. So I've had some students that are really meticulous and they'll set their camera up on a tripod and they'll mark with chalk exactly where the tripod is, and they'll tape like the lens zoom and tape it everything in place so they can just like bring the camera in, bring it back out whenever it's time to photograph. But the subject that you should be looking for, or the, I guess I should say, space, you really want it to be three-dimensional. So not just like looking out a window at a brick wall. You need to have maybe some trees or have some three-dimensional space. So like a corner of a building, or maybe it's a building that has a porch, or maybe it's your backyard and the garage, or maybe it's a nearby the park or street, or something like that. But we want to see how light changes throughout the day, and so the direction of the light changing is an important part of this. You're going to notice that not just the direction of the light changes, the color of the light changes, and the quality of light from hard to soft changes in each of these. And the idea is to really understand that photographing a subject, you might get a good photo, but maybe you can intentionally choose the right time of day to photograph to get more of a mood that you want. So here's a couple of quick examples of that, of previous student images. So I believe these are all in order: sunrise, midday, sunset, and then dusk. I believe some of these actually have night photos, but keep in mind you want to get at least those four. If you want to photograph when it's completely dark too, bonus points to you. So morning, sunrise, midday, evening, dusk. So, and I'll say compositionally, this image is a little bit problematic, and I would leave a little bit more space for a viewer to kind of visually walk into the photo. So tipping the camera down by like a third of the frame probably would be compositionally stronger. But nonetheless, morning, midday, that feels more like midday, but I'll go with it. I'll assume these are in order. Near sunset, dusk. Okay, the third part of the project is photographing at night. And this can be more challenging for some students to kind of understand what length of time and or aperture and ISO combination will get you a good picture. But the essential part would be use a tripod and just vary your exposure time. Okay, so we probably want to use our lens widest aperture, which is, for some lenses it's like a 2.8 maybe, but I think most of the lenses that you'll all have will be about a 5.6 or somewhere in the like 3.5 or 4 range. You need to have your tripod for this project. You need to ensure that you have stability. If your camera shakes, everything will be blurry. A remote or intervalometer is helpful, but most of you won't have it. So what we're going to use instead is a 2-second or 10-second delay timer. Additionally, if you want to do any light painting, you might want to bring a flashlight. And you want to make sure your batteries are fully charged, and you're ready to fill a memory card, so copy the files off. And then some people like to have something to kind of block light from hitting the lens, like a lens hood or tape or something like that, to make things easier. We'll start with probably setting our ISO around 800. Use our largest aperture. It'll give us a shallow depth of field, but that should work well for most urban photography. If you were looking to get stars, you probably want to stop down, but I think we're all going to be photographing cityscapes of some sort. And then we're going to vary our shutter speed. So if you take your shutter speed past 1 second, you'll get like a 2 with a hash, and then it'll go up through other, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, up to usually 30 seconds without needing any extra, like a intervalometer or remote or something of that sort. Some cameras do have a bulb exposure, but that requires you to press down the button and hold it. And that doesn't work very well because your hand will actually shake the camera. So you want to make sure that you're set up on a tripod, you actually have a couple second countdown, and then you're not touching the camera for at least a second before the shutter opens so that you don't get that shake from your hand having touched it. Okay, focusing can be difficult. So if you have enough light, autofocus will work. That will be wonderful. But if you're having struggle with autofocus, point it at something that is bright, get it to focus, then flip the switch on the lens from AF to MF, and make sure you don't touch the end of the lens, and that will essentially leave the focus as it was, and you can then recompose your image. The other thing that can help is using live view. You can zoom in order to manually focus on something that you want to be sharp, or shining a flashlight into your scene. I actually like to take my phone, as long as I'm not walking that far, but set my phone down with the screen lit up, go back to my camera, focus on my phone, switch it to manual focus, and then go pull my phone back out. But always check your picture after you've taken it to make sure it comes out sharp. Okay, we're going to be looking to photograph static and active landscapes. So static would be with nothing moving. So really just focusing on the landscape itself or the buildings or whatnot. And then we're going to intentionally photograph areas where you'll have active things happening, people walking, cars, the L, or you could do light painting with a flashlight. So we're looking to get a good number of images. I believe the assignment says 20 images, not 30, but somewhere in the range of 20 to 30 images of each of those, and then you'll pick your best one and make sure that it's nice and sharp. For noise reduction and stability, we don't want to go too high with our ISO. Some cameras will actually have a noise reduction option in them. I don't believe that most digital Rebels do, which are the ones that most students have. But we can also take out some noise in post-production. For the tripod, try to avoid using the center column because that is the least stable part. And then make sure that you're using some sort of a timer, a 2-second or a 10-second delay timer in order to not have your hand touching it shake the camera. Just a quick thought on safety and ethics. So like I always suggest bring someone with you, scout things out, make sure that it's safe. Just be aware of your surroundings. Don't get too lost in the camera, and try not to stand in roads or don't trespass. Calling me for bail after you've been arrested for trespassing, sorry, I'm not going to be able to help you. So just be conscious, don't break laws, and your safety is more important than capturing the perfect photo. Okay, so long exposure can do some really wonderful things, make sort of ghostly, dreamlike trails through the image. It captures mood in different ways. Sometimes you get funny color light that you don't notice with your eyes. So you might get some really exciting images out of this. And as a compositional tip, think about having a foreground, middle ground, and background. That's kind of what I was talking about with the example of the person's backyard, where there just really wasn't much space to enter the photo. So it sort of feels like I'm cut off from it and it's harder to interact with it. So here's some other things to kind of think about: leading lines, reflections, framing, negative space, balance, color, all things that make night photography really more interesting. White balance, just make sure you're shooting in RAW. That's the kind of key thing. You're going to encounter a whole different set of color light sources, street lights versus inside homes. You often get like yellow light versus green light for fluorescent versus blue, which you can always tell someone has their TV on when the whole room looks blue. But we're going to kind of let that be something that we can kind of fix and post if we shoot in RAW. And then just think about what you can actually say about, communicate about the night or about your subject. There's lots of options. Okay, and here's some examples, and I'm gonna just go through them really quick because you can you could review this in the slide on its own. But these are a lot of well-known night photographers. All right. Ignore the portraits because I've cut that out of this, but make sure you're shooting in RAW, make sure you're using a tripod, use a 2 or 10-second countdown timer. Manually focusing will usually help ensure that you have sharp images if your camera is having trouble. And then try to create images with depth.